If you're in the market for a smartphone that offers 5G connectivity, decent camera, as well as really great battery life and fast charging, then perhaps the Oppo Reno7 5G is what you're looking for. Hey, what up? It's your boy MobbJustice back again with another video, and for today we do get into a review of the Oppo Reno7 5G. It is the first smartphone review that we've had on this platform, and definitely looking forward to just sharing some insights from my time with this device. As always, this video is brought to you by the team over at Liyon Media. Head on over to check out some of the crispiest photo, video, and audio content. That's www.lionmedia.com. Head on over, check it out, and just see what the team can do for you. So as I said, this is the first smartphone review on the platform. We've often reviewed devices such as your laptops, but this time around we have a smartphone that we're going to be looking at. Shout out to the team over at Oppo. They sent over the device around towards the end of March, so I've had it for about 6 months, and I thought that this would be a good enough time to give a thorough review of what's going on. Oppo has not paid for this review. Right off the bat, I think this is a great option for someone who's sort of in that middle to upper part of the market, looking for decent battery life, a great software experience, as well as some of those perks such as fast charging. In approaching this review, there were 3 things that we were trying to achieve. Firstly, looking at what is the phone like to live with on a daily basis, and then second, what is it like as a content production device. A lot of people are creating content for the likes of social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and the like. And then thirdly, what is it like to consume content on this? So this phone comes in a number of different configurations, and this particular one has 8 gigs of RAM. It has a MediaTek chipset, as well as 256 gigs in terms of storage. I'll put up the main specs on the screen just so that you can see, but I think one of the big things is the fact that this is running a custom skin of Android called Color OS. I think it's quite a snappy one, not too much that's going on. It's pretty simple and quite in line with all of the other companies that you see under that Oppo brand. What people may not know is that Oppo is actually a Chinese smartphone manufacturer that's become the biggest in that particular country. That spot used to belong to Huawei, but because of all the drama over the last couple of years, it's meant that other players have come in to fill that gap. It's part of a bigger group called BBK Electronics, and they own brands such as, we've got Oppo, and then you have Vivo, Realme, as well as OnePlus. So if you've used or have been exposed to some of those other brands or other Oppo devices, then the software experience is not going to be anything too much out of the line with what you're seeing. I actually like it. It's pretty cool and it's pretty light, and as far as I could see, it's a pretty snappy interface as far as I'm concerned. So in terms of the unboxing experience, some of the items that you get in the box is that you have the phone itself, and then you also then get a cover that goes around the phone to get things started off. And then something that is unusual, at least in this day and age, is that Oppo includes a charger that is the Super VOOC charger, coming in at 65 watts, and then it doesn't have any earphones in the packet, and then you get some of that literature. So in terms of build quality, I actually like the design and the feel that this device has in hand. It has quite a tall aspect ratio, which means you can easily reach across the screen. Tall, narrow display, generally feeling good in the hand, as I said. And then it's got a big chin at the bottom, which has become a bit of a signature for for some of the mid-range Android devices, simply because it means that they haven't invested in terms of folding, the screen underneath, to get that even bezel like we see in some of the more high-end devices. And then we also have the color shifting back, like I said, which I think looks, pretty good. And then for someone like me, it's always good, when we see a smartphone like this that has a headphone jack. Looking specifically at the display of this device, I did say that it has a snappy interface. That's because it has a 90 Hertz refresh rate, which is above the 60 that a lot of people are used to, but not quite at the 120 or even the crazy 240 or higher rates that we see on some of the gaming devices. So it really looks good, and the interface, as I said, is quite snappy from that point of view. The resolution comes in at 2400 by 1080, so essentially it's a 1080p display, and I found that in terms of consuming content, it's pretty nice. But because of that aspect ratio, it does mean if you're consuming videos that are in the normal 16 by 9, you're usually going to get the black bars on the side, but you can stretch it out if need be. Moving on to the camera, on paper you have really great specs. You've got a 64 megapixel main shooter on the camera, as well as an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and then a 2 megapixel macro lens on this. For me personally, I was taking the camera out for some of our professional work, doing some behind the scenes, just to test out how it performs in different lighting conditions. And for the most part, I would say that the camera takes pictures that are quite all right, as long as the the lighting is okay. It takes decent pictures. But what I did struggle with was on the video side of things. You have this sort of over sharpened effect in the footage that you get out of the camera, and in low light you can certainly see that it introduces a lot of noise, and the picture does fall apart quite a bit. So to get a different view on the camera, I actually gave the phone to my partner over at Liyon Media, that is Godfrey Kadzere, and we were out on a shoot together, and then just allowed him to play around with the phone. So I just caught up with him just to get his thoughts after using the phone for a bit, just around how it works as a video shoot as well as a photo camera.
So I was am impressed by this phone, just purely from an aesthetic point of view, from a feel point of view. The functionality is also quite exciting. It's an exciting phone. I understand that it's a mid-range phone. So for first impression, it looks good aesthetically. You can show off with it. I like it. I presume as well that the budget point makes sense, figuratively and literally, all puns intended. Yeah, it works. It's a phone that has 2 cameras. So the hardware is quite impressive, although the software not so much. Just seeing how it has these big lenses, a 64 megapixel camera, and so it doesn't do so great in low light. I was testing it a few moments ago, so we were on set for production. Liyon Media, check them out. So we were doing a production. I was doing some behind the scenes footage with this phone, video footage, and you could see a few grains in the frame, in the image. Although when the lighting was better, it looked quite nice actually. The colors were represented quite well. The blacks were dark enough. The browns, there was a few brown accents in the frame and the shot, so you could see the color distribution quite well. As I said though, that there is a few issues with lighting when it's darker, that it produces a bit of noise. The images are also quite clear, quite sharp. Again, relatively good color representation, although it's not as sharp compared to some of the high-end phones. And so yeah, I like this. It's a fun phone. Again, looking at the price point, I do think you get your value. It feels nice, as I said. It's a good, it's a touch lock system on the screen, which has a nice animation. That's pretty fun. I think, yeah, if anyone was to, if I'd recommend who to buy this phone for, I think teenagers would enjoy this, and perhaps young adults that are looking for something that's functional, something that's pretty, and cool. So yeah, that's my take on it.
This phone runs on a version of Android called Color OS, that is Oppo skin over Android, and it's a little bit of a departure, over the One UI that I've become, quite accustomed to on the Samsung side. But I like it. It's quite snappy as far as I can see, with a couple of nice tweaks and features, and customizations that do come with the interface. Since this is the Oppo Reno7 5G, we had to test the 5G performance, and 5G is one of those nascent technologies. Couldn't find it in a lot of places in Johannesburg. Tends to be 4G, or what the phone calls 4G plus. But when I did find 5G areas somewhere in Johannesburg using the Vodacom network, getting really great speeds. You can see the difference between 4G and 5G speeds, right? Especially on the download side, but the upload, a little bit disappointing. And then in terms of call quality, believe it or not, a lot of people still use their phones to make traditional phone calls, and I made a couple of phone calls, just testing out between my main phone, my main Samsung phone, and the Oppo, and the people that I tested with, just calling, doing A/B testing, they said I didn't sound any different, and that means we're good on that point of view. In terms of battery, the Oppo Reno7 5G has a 4500 milliamp hour battery, and it offers support for Oppo's fast charging called Super VOOC. That is a 65 watt charger that you find in the box, and it's claimed to get from 0 to 100% battery in just over 30 minutes. I plugged it in myself. I had always heard about Super VOOC charging, but just watching it in action is actually quite something else. And it does this because it actually has two connected cells that actually charge in parallel. Because I've been using this phone for a number of months now, there are a couple of impressions and quirks that I do have. First one, I just noticed that it has a swipe type of keyboard that it has enabled by default. For a person like me who uses a feature like that, really great. Unfortunately, this thing does not have double tap to wake. That's basically where you can literally double tap the phone to wake it up. It doesn't have that. If you want to wake it up, you always have to press the button on the side or use the fingerprint sensor. And speaking of that fingerprint sensor, that thing is fast. Once again, I use an under display fingerprint sensor on the Samsung, which is pretty quick. It was one of the first phones to have it back in 2019. But the speed, of the fingerprint scanner on the Oppo Reno7 5G, is actually quite quick, I have to admit. Unfortunately, on the battery side, this phone does not have wireless charging. That's a feature that I've become quite accustomed to, and would have really liked to have seen on a device like this. And by default, you get a lot of haptic feedback for various functionality in the interface, whether it's swiping things, typing, that type of thing. I find some of them to be a bit tough, but for the most part, they work as advertised. And because it has such a tall, narrow display and aspect ratio, it handles app scaling in an interesting way compared to other Android devices. So here I'm showing the Samsung and the Oppo next to each other, and if you open Instagram, you can see what I mean. A lot of the elements are in line at the top, but as we go further down, the main post, the text, and then that bottom row at the bottom where it's located, you can see that they're handling the scaling of this app in a completely different way. Just something to note, because I like to use Instagram as a way to see how different phones handle their app scaling. And then lastly, one of the things that I did notice is the fact that this phone doesn't have a raise to wake feature. Earlier on, I spoke about double tap to wake. That's where you double tap. But now, just simply, a number of phones have gyroscopes in them, so that as soon as you lift up the phone, it wakes up, or at least shows you what's on the display. This phone does not have that. You try to lift it all the time, and nothing happens. Yes, you'll see the fingerprint scanner popping up, but the display itself doesn't do anything, unlike something like this. The moment you put it up, it does go up. So overall, I would say that this is a great device, not quite at that flagship level, but for what it is and at the price that it comes in at, I would say that this is a great set of specs. It performs well, and as I said, that interface is snappy. If you are a content creator, this might not be the best phone for you. As I said earlier on, the video part is what turned me off a little bit on that particular front. But for everyday use, everyone else is going to find decent quality. You can shoot at 4K as well as 1080p at 30, 60, 90, 100 and 20 frames a second. So you're quite flexible in the type of formats that you can get out of this camera. But if you're looking for that sort of tack sharp focus, you might have to keep this one in mind if you're going to be using it as a camera for either behind the scenes or as an extra angle B-roll, that type of thing. But at the same time, some of these things can be a little bit subjective. As you heard, Godfrey quite enjoyed the experience of the camera. For me, I said decent pictures, it's just on the video front, but for yourself, you might find yourself liking this for whatever application you have for it. So that's been it. You can let me know what you think. Is this a phone that you'd consider to buy for yourself? Is it something that you've come across? Are you hearing about this for the first time? What do you think about the specs, and what do you think of the way that it looks, that shimmery aspect that it has? You guys can let me know what you think in the comments. I'm definitely keen to get my hands on some of the other devices in Oppo's range, particularly now that we're starting to see the Oppo Reno7 out in the wild. Definitely keen to hear what you have to say, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Hey, this is Baby G, and you're watching the Mob Justice channel. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Live it, love it, like it. This is the Mob Justice TV.
No.